So do you want to, I will do the announcement.
Live from VentureX Studios, it's JP, Kathy, and the crew.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the week with JP, Kathy, and the crew. So excited you're able to join us this morning. Lots to talk about. JP's going to come on a little bit later. Lots and lots of college football. A little college football mania this past weekend. So lots to talk about there. This morning we've got Dr. Norm Clothier with us. He is our medical expert, and he is with us the beginning of each week. Always has a great information. Today we're, we've been talking about COVID, and not that that's not important. And of course, there's always new developments with the new strain and things of that nature. But today we're going to talk about something that has recently, and those of you who have tuned in lately know my husband is in the hospital still. Tomorrow will be a week from sleep apnea complications. Did not realize, I knew it was dangerous, knew you could die of a heart attack in your sleep and things like that. But my husband, the night before we took him to the emergency room on Tuesday, that Monday, he had fallen 3 times, literally was falling, sitting asleep in his chair, just sounded incoherent, almost sounded, and I don't mean to make light of this at all, but sounded like a drunk zombie. And turns out not only was his oxygen down to 70 by the time we got him to the hospital, which obviously is extremely dangerous, but he also had an excess of CO2 in his blood and in his lungs, because he was unable to expel air during the times he tried to sleep. It really wasn't sleep. So wanted to have Dr. Clothier talk about this, because in talking with a lot of friends and asking people to pray, finding out this is a very common problem and there are serious complications that can happen. And so I thought, well, let's have our medical expert talk about this today. So how are you, Dr. Clothier?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good.
Sorry you're having to go through all that. I think it is very difficult.
Thank you. It really
very
is.
Challenging.
It is. And, it's interesting. I had no idea when I started looking into all of the things that can happen from the excess CO2 in your blood. Had no idea. I mean, some very dangerous things can happen. And, we looked at the list, and Michael had like 8 out of 10 symptoms on any given list. So, and I feel like, he's had sleep apnea since he was an adult. Since after college, I think he's had a sleep machine. It also matters what sleep machine. He was recently on a CPAP machine, which broke, and he thought, I'll be okay until I see the pulmonologist on December 17th. Well, wrong. And he turns out now we've found out he needs a BiPAP machine instead. So please talk to us and tell the crew about the dangers of sleep apnea and what you need to do to make sure you stay on top of it.
Sure. First, the actual definition of sleep apnea, I suppose, would be a way to start. And apnea means low oxygen issue. And so sleep apnea means when you're asleep, you drop in your oxygen. So many people are thinking much more about oxygen ever since the pandemic, because it seems everybody has bought a pulse oximeter.
Yes.
And, measure themselves. So 92% or more is generally considered to be normal. And if you have a suspicion of sleep apnea or, some degree, they actually technically means a drop in breathing overnight, which leads to the drop in oxygen. But
okay.
That can be measurable, in like a sleep state. So the reasons to be suspicious are gasping or breath holding spells. There is an association with snoring, although some people snore and don't have sleep apnea, but many people who snore, it's because their membranes, their tissues in their neck and throat and nose all kind of tend to make noise as they breathe at night. And it's largely because they collapse on themselves and kind of block the airflow. And so one of the things that is often under consideration if somebody thinks they have sleep apnea is to consider like a mouthpiece or a device that will keep the tissues in a better location, a better likelihood of allowing oxygen through. But if a sleep study is done, it should measure whether someone has hypoxic episodes or apneic episodes where they quit breathing for a while, and often, the partner of a person who has sleep apnea will kind of know that. In fact, I find often people will bring in like a recording of how the individual will breathe and then kind of have a long gap and then kind of gasp to come back into breathing, sort of. And so, the two problems from that really are, one, you don't get very good quality sleep because you're often gasping back, pseudo awake, not fully awake, but maybe partly. And certainly a number of individuals kind of realize they're sort of choking themselves into wakefulness, and that can happen on, the couch with a nap or in a chair with an uncomfortable position. But it certainly shouldn't happen overnight during what should be pretty normal sleep. And then, of course, the other issue is that when the oxygen drops, other functions of the body cannot work very well. So, his oxygen level has obviously been incredibly low. Often people find out they have like 85 apneic episodes overnight or hypoxic episodes, or something like that. A lot of episodes. It's not just a couple.
No, it's nothing. It's usually an extremely high number, like you're saying, where almost, some people, and I know my husband falls into this category, and then one of my best friends does too, and that's where like every couple of minutes you could have an episode. I mean, there's some severe cases like that, so it's nothing to be taken lightly. And you're right. You can have a spouse that snores, or a partner, or you can have family member that snores, and that doesn't mean you have sleep apnea. But I tell you what, better safe than sorry if you snore a lot, or if you're with somebody and they're like, you seem to gasp for breath. If you're gasping for breath, that's a whole new category.
Exactly. So it's almost like being underwater. Or something, and having to kind of reach to the surface and grab a quick breath before you kind of sink down again. So it is a very serious issue. And I do think it's been talked about more during the COVID era, because we've talked more about shortness of breath and, breathing issues with virus. And this, of course, been around a lot longer. So if the oxygen is low, as you mentioned with his being down around 70%, or so, that other gap has to be made up by something. And so, I think everybody's familiar with carbon monoxide poisoning. Like if somebody, has a heater that goes bad and puts out carbon monoxide, it competes with the oxygen in the body and eliminates the oxygen in the bloodstream and takes over, and your body can't get its nutritional supply of oxygen to keep the brain and the organs going. And of course, that can be fatal. And so with carbon dioxide, if you're not able to breathe in and out effectively, more and more of the body's oxygen gets converted to carbon dioxide as the body is in its normal physiologic state. And then it should be able to breathe off that carbon dioxide. That's why we breathe out. We breathe in to bring in oxygen. We breathe out to get rid of carbon dioxide. And if that process is interrupted for quite a while, then that carbon dioxide starts to compete with oxygen and fill those receptors. And pretty soon there's not enough oxygen, for instance, to stay awake, alert. It's very similar to being at high altitude. Every year we hear about people that die at Mount Everest trying to climb it because they don't have enough oxygen at that kind of altitude. And it's kind of similar to that too. The body needs that oxygen supply, and if the breathing mechanism is not effectively working, then it becomes a higher and higher risk. And indeed, if you look at the bad stats, people can die from sleep apnea, and it's a very sad, tragic situation. And I obviously, in retrospect, had his machine not broken, you'd be going through none of this, and you wouldn't have to wonder what's going on. So that brings up a couple of other issues. One of which is you got to do all you can to keep equipment up to date and even appointments, and that's very hard in the COVID era. That's another reason we want to see the virus decrease dramatically, is that the people who provide intensive care in the hospital are pulmonologists frequently. Some are other intensivists, cardiologists, whatever, but certainly with COVID and COVID pneumonia and COVID lung destruction and COVID death from, having to be intubated, not being able to recover, and all those things, it greatly occupied the time of the pulmonologist. And very much like you hear about hospitals having a shortage of ICU beds, we all have a shortage of pulmonologists available because they're all up there 24 hours a day trying to rescue people the best they can from COVID. And so, that's one of the fallouts from the pandemic that I think maybe people don't really ponder and sit around and think, oh, if I call up tomorrow, I want to get in to see my pulmonologist. It easily could be months.
Well, and
that's just the nature of they're all at the hospital trying to take care of people.
And I want to reiterate what you're saying. That was part of our problem. His machine broke about 2 months ago. He went in a few weeks later to his regular, because with insurance, you've got go to the regular doctor. The regular doctor gets you to the pulmonologist. Pulmonologist gets you to the sleep clinic. Well, Dr. Clothier, we were lucky. This was a new pulmonologist, and December 17th, we were actually very lucky to secure that date, even though it just got to the point where I knew we couldn't wait. Most pulmonologists, and again, because COVID patients are their priority right now, you're lucky if you can get in to see a pulmonologist in January. And this is like a few weeks ago making an appointment. So if you do have some kind of chronic condition like COPD or sleep apnea where you see a pulmonologist, boy, howdy, make your appointment way in advance, because they're the most in-demand type of doctor right now, it seems to be. And then the supply chain demand, even calling the sleep clinic, they said, hey, even when we do get your husband in, you need to know it might be January, February, March of 2022 before we can actually get him a new machine. So if you've got any kind of chronic lung issues, make sure you're planning way in advance for your normal visits and things like that. You're spot on with that.
Yeah, and that gets down to a couple other things too. We're very used to having very quick service here in America. Order on Amazon, get something in 20 minutes by drone.
Yep.
And the fact is there just isn't that kind of ready supply right now for various reasons, and we don't have time to get into all that. But supplies have become a challenging issue. But also, I do want to reemphasize that appointment issue. I often, in fact, it may even get magnified in December because everybody wants to beat the end of the year deductible. They suddenly realize, oh, I've been putting off my knee surgery. I want to get in, this month to get it done. Well, you're not the first one to think of that, frankly. I hate to disappoint people in realizing that, but I've literally had someone in a prior year call on December 31st and demand that we get them in with the GI doctor to get their colonoscopy done by the end of the year. And, obviously it's impossible from the standpoint of even the prep and the planning, but, and their comment was something like, but you don't understand, my deductible runs out. Well, that's true for you and the other, somewhere around 200 million insured people. So it is a challenge, and it doesn't mean your doctor doesn't like you. It doesn't mean that, that somebody is biased or doesn't care that you have a serious condition. It's just the reality that there's only a certain amount of time to go around. I often think to myself, boy, if somebody calls, in need, I'll start looking at schedule and thinking, boy, is there anybody here I could cancel, move, try a set for another day, and it ultimately nearly always comes down to, well, all these people have also needed to be seen and have appointments, and sometimes it just gets bumped down the line some. And while that's obviously very important, in fact, your husband's situation is a very clear one of higher cost and medical need because of that, because of the crisis he hit. But, that it's just impossible to prioritize in the exact order you would retrospectively realize somebody else needed to be bumped and somebody else moved in to be seen. And that's a really hard thing. We never want to think of patients as a commodity, in terms of trying to figure out who has more need than somebody else, because to everyone, their need is the highest need. And that's what we try to respect. But it is very challenging. And, December is a hard time of year anyway with other disease, illness, wintertime issues, although we haven't had much cold weather yet. But, people stay indoors more and get more infection from other things. People overeat at Thanksgiving, get sick all the way till Christmas from overeating. You know, there just are a lot of factors that all play a role there. But certainly we want, if anybody thinks they have sleep apnea, they should go get a sleep study. Many times that actually can be done directly by a family physician, for instance, in terms of getting you in for a sleep study. It's not always, you know, stop off at the pulmonologist first, although if you're on treatment, that's often the case. But there are ways to kind of allow the system to work in a little more efficient way. One of them, unfortunately, though, is nobody can seem to overcome the supply problems. And that's something we're really going to have to figure out a way to deal with, because we are used to having things just available the second we say we want them, you know, and that's understandable. That's been the way here in America. We've been, you know, very privileged to have that
very
kind of
fortunate,
supply,
very blessed,
and we're having to adjust.
Yep. And that's a frightening thing, you know. And then you get into an issue of, okay, so you've got to start thinking proactively. It's not making a doctor's appointment and securing one within a few weeks. Like, you know, that's a normal thing. We're used to that. I'm sure you're seeing that at your practice. And it's kind of all practices.
You know, and it's just all, you know, one of the factors, and again, it's easy to blame everything on the pandemic right now, so we will. But you know, because so much got postponed last year by the shutdown nature of the pandemic, what I find is, you know, more and more people are saying, oh, my company says I really got to get my physical by the end of the year, you know, and because I didn't last year, or, you know, just all kinds of things where people have just kind of bumped forward by a few months, and now they're all bumping into each other trying to get in, frankly. And you know, it is hard. And I know a number of doctors who feel a significant amount of burnout from, as much as anything, just worrying about getting the virus and maybe dying from it by seeing people and treating them and such. And I think it's really been a stress on, you know, what I think is still the best running medical system in the world. And I think, you know, it's just been a tremendous strain to have so many people with such a severe and potentially fatal illness with COVID, that many other things have, you know, almost by the nature of that, kind of been pushed to the side, and they can't be. We have to figure out a way to catch up to that. But it's very hard. We have trouble getting staff in. We have, you know, all kinds of barriers, and I realize none of that particularly is a concern of the patient, but it is all a factor in how efficiently we can get patients in.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to talk about this, because you're right. I think it's part of a bigger problem that's out there just in general, as far as you're right. If you're thinking of any kind of medical needs and it's the end of the year, I mean, you know, we're getting closer to December 15th. I would imagine if you're to call your doctor, your gynecologist, your pediatrician, or whoever you're going to call for whatever need it is, it's not like it was before. I know even my mom, with having got she got cataract surgery on both of her eyes this year, and we had, I mean, my goodness, we had to book follow-up visits after the surgery so far in advance, just again because scheduling looks different. They're short-staffed, and so it is what it is. So plan ahead, plan accordingly, and thank you so much for talking about something that's very close and personal to me right now, which is the sleep apnea. It is nothing to mess around with. If you have a loved one who does that gasping, you know, it's interesting. You said underwater. I was nodding my head saying, yes, that's what it looks like. It almost looks like, to me, and the way I was explaining it to the emergency room was, it looked like somebody was putting a plastic bag over my husband's head. His whole body would kind of suck in and cave in. And it looked like he had plastic, a plastic bag over his head. It's nothing to mess around with. It's so serious that they're
scary.
they're not letting him go without a machine.
I know it's always, exactly. And you know, it's always scary to have to go through that. Unfortunately, it's definitely scary, but it also is scary to read up on something and see all the worst case scenarios.
Right.
And I know it's hard not to in the modern age of Googling and whatever, but at this point, since he's in the hospital, obviously, my general recommendation to people would be trust the situation that is being administered for him individually. Don't try to get too much into the type of, Google and find out some odd worst case scenario, because he is being treated as an individual by his doctors who know him at the hospital. And I think that's also a real key for people. Don't try to pick a treatment from outside on, depending on what a neighbor says, or, same things that are true with COVID.
Wait, what about on Facebook?
To go with evidence, try to go with advice.
Well, and it's funny because I thought about you. I looked up the CO2, excess CO2, because I had no idea about that. And I read a couple of articles, and then I said, okay, Kathy, this is bad. It could have been way worse. You really could have lost him. Stop reading it. And I thought about you. I thought, you know what? Not going to find the answers on Facebook. I'm going to listen to the experts in the hospital. So you'd be proud of me. I've learned something.
I appreciate that. Yeah, very good.
Oh, well,
it's a challenge.
It is. It is. Well, have a great week. Thank you so much, Dr. Clothier, for being with us. Have a blessed week.
I hope all goes well for you and your family.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you soon. All right, that's Dr. Norm Clothier, and just always a wealth of information. Do we have information on? Do we have information? Do we have JP? Okay. Well, we are ready for him. We're going to be talking a little college football. My goodness, it's a lot of college football today. And we did want to give a shout out to the Mesquite police officer who was killed, which is just such a tragedy. So just prayers to this Officer Houston's family. Of course, there was a prayer vigil yesterday. I know a number of people I saw on Facebook had supported his family and him out at this vigil. Just prayers for his family and his brothers and sisters in blue. Such a tragedy, just such a tragedy. So Officer Richard Houston, please rest in peace. And we are praying for you and your family here at JP, Kathy, and the crew. And then let's, speaking of JP, part of JP, Kathy, and the crew, let me know when he is unmuted. Oh, excellent.
I've been in the whole time.
Hello. So do we have a little college football from this weekend, JP?
There's not much to talk about.
I didn't think so. What, you can cover it in about a minute and a half?
Well, I'm thinking that the International Badminton Champions among
Let's
the
talk
American
that today.
Police Academy of Science.
Let's talk curling today. Yeah, sure.
Because you did know that there was an International Badminton for American Flea Society, right?
Sure. Okay. As I Google it,
and we give gold medals out for that. It's amazing. Now, lots of college football. Holy cow! Where should we start?
I don't even know.
One of the most impactful games of the entire weekend. That's where we're going to start. Kent State versus Northern Illinois. You didn't see that coming, did you?
I didn't think you would lead with that.
Yep, that's what we're leading with. The MAC championship, not even close. Northern Illinois destroys Kent State 41-23. And then the second most impactful game of the weekend, Appalachian State taking on Louisiana Lafayette. And Louisiana handles it. The number 20 ranking stays secured as they win the Sun Belt Championship. Oh, yeah, that probably wasn't the two most major championship games going on. How about the university? The one, the only, the Baylor Bears.
Sick 'em. Boy, howdy. And
they take on Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and I felt so sorry for Michael. So, he's still in the hospital, and he's watching it on his phone because the channel, I think it was on channel 8, like ABC or something. That was one of the few channels the hospital didn't get on the regular cable TV. So he ended up watching it just on his little phone. But he was a very happy camper by the end of the game.
Boy, no doubt about it. I'll tell you what, Baylor handled their business. Oklahoma State, there's two things that Baylor had going for them. One, they came super fried, supercharged, ready to go.
Oh, big
played
time.
Good football on all sides of the ball. They never let up. They didn't really make any mistakes, which was good. And so what do we have? We've got the Baylor Bears beating Oklahoma State 21-16 Oklahoma State, the second part of that is Oklahoma State did not come ready to go. Their defense just didn't play the way that it normally has been playing. And again, the big part of that could be that the Baylor Bears took them out of their game. No doubt about that. And so hats off to Baylor, hats off to their coaching staff for recruiting the right players and putting all the right players in the right place. Do I think that Baylor gets screwed on this deal? I do. I think Baylor is as good as Alabama.
Yes.
And so I think Baylor should be in the playoff picture. I think that should be part of the conversation.
Agree.
I think it's tragic that it's not.
Agree.
I don't think Alabama is as good as their ranking. They got ranked number 1 again. Georgia let down, and Alabama wins.
I just hated that. Alabama, it's like they get a hall pass because of the past couple of seasons or something.
Well, not just the past couple of seasons. Goodness gracious! I mean, Alabama.
I
even though I
know,
can't
long
stand
time, and I can't either.
I mean, they've done it. I mean, they've won national championships. They've been to the big show more than anybody else has. But when it comes down to it, this year, I don't think they're as good as their ranking.
Agree.
Georgia let down. I don't understand what happened with Georgia, and we'll talk about that game here in a minute. But I think Baylor gets jacked. I think Baylor should have been in the conversation. I do think that Baylor is as good as Alabama and deserve to be in that playoff spot. But they're the Big 12 championships. They're going to the Sugar Bowl. And so, sick 'em Bears, great season with a culmination of the Big 12 championship. Hats off to them.
Yep.
And so then we go down. I'll tell you, and I guess it's not a surprise for everybody else in the world, but just a surprise to me because I really thought that Oregon was going to kick it up a notch, Kathy, and Oregon did not. Again, just surprised, and I say Oregon, but I'm talking about, of course, the University of Oregon versus Utah football game. And for some reason, my phone is not giving me the score all of a sudden.
Uh-oh.
There it is. I got it back. Even the pundits didn't think that Utah was as good as Oregon. Utah already beat Oregon once. Thought that they would come back. Oregon would come back, have a better game plan, be ready to go. Oregon maintained its number 10 ranking while Utah was ranked number 17. And truly, I felt like Oregon would win this football game, and it just didn't happen. Utah will be making its first trip to the Rose Bowl, and not quiet. Utah had Oregon's number this year all the way around. Utah wins that game 38-10. And so Utah will definitely break on the national scene. Their players will get, their players have only gotten regional coverage. And so they'll get national coverage now. And, I didn't see it coming. So, anyways, hats off to Utah. They win and they go on to the Rose Bowl. No big surprise here, I think. I know that Iowa fans are probably shaking their head. I'm not. I'll be honest, since Hayden Fry, I don't think Iowa's had a good football program.
Interesting.
And here they are. They're in the Big Ten championship, and Michigan says, yeah, we are ranked number 2. And they win 42-3. No letdown after Ohio State. Because, of course, Ohio State was a huge game. And sometimes teams can get up for one game and then they let up. They have not. And so Michigan stays in the playoff conversation. Of course, they're already automatically an underdog, interestingly enough, which I don't know if I agree with that. And in fact, there's been some SEC favor that's been talked about in the news as well, that the SEC seems to always get a little extra flavor and favor over everybody else going into the college football playoffs. But, yeah, so big game there. Michigan, big win, 42-3. Pitt takes care of Wake to win the Big East, 45-21. Pitt's been one of those colleges this year as well, college football teams, that's just been kind of quiet. They've been winning their games, taking care of business, and winning them with some style points. And so Pitt should be applauded as well for a great football season as they destroy Wake Forest, 45-21. Other big game of note, of course, Houston and Cincinnati. Cincinnati stays number 4 in the country. They beat Houston 35-20 to go on and win their league championship. They are in the playoff picture. And so now we're going to find out real fast. Is Cincinnati really what they've all been hyped up to be? And they will face Alabama in the first round of the college football playoffs. And I'm going to be honest, Kathy, I'm going to take Cincinnati over Alabama.
Okay, interesting. So,
So
do you have
part of
any
it is
score?
because I
Do you have a
can't stand
score
Alabama.
prediction? Yeah, I was gonna say I know you don't like them. Do you have a score prediction?
No score prediction just yet. I'm kind of
Okay.
holding back. I want to see how practices go, how the media days go. 'Cause we've
Gotcha.
got some time still, but yeah, I think Cincinnati can beat Alabama. I think they will beat Alabama. I think you take the film from Texas A&M and the film from Auburn, and you draw it up. That's your game plan you draw up against Alabama, and that's your formula for winning. I mean, really run the ball hard. They can't stop the run on defense. Your cover 6 package, your dime package, nickel package has to be strong, where you pressure the quarterback and keep good coverage because their passing game is not very strong either. So I think Cincinnati can do it, but will they is the question. And then, of course, you've got Georgia and Michigan, and I've got no prediction yet for Georgia and Michigan. So, again, we'll have to see how they practice. But yeah, you're right. It was a big weekend in college football. Baylor fans were all over my social media. I didn't realize I had so many friends that were Baylor fans.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. All of a sudden, our buddies like Jerry Durham and stuff, everybody's changing out their profile picture for like a Baylor helmet or something like that, or a Sikkim Bears. So, yeah, I love it. I love it. Mary McClure, because I know she's on your social media feed, her daughter was wearing her Baylor line shirt from back when she was a Baylor Bear. So
Right.
you could tell everybody who was a Baylor Bear was having a good time.
Yep, and that's the truth. And so, but again, hats off to Baylor. What a great season. Big 12 championship. We kept it in Texas. Whoop, whoop. A little A&M for you there without blowing out your speakers. And, but again, great weekend of college football. A lot going on, a lot of fun. And now we get to sit back and kind of watch and see how things go and watch the bowl game. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Good
All right.
times.
Debbie, what'd I tell you? How about them Cowboys?
Wow.
Told you the Dallas Cowboys would come back.
They did not disappoint. And this was one of those things. It was okay, we've got to do this, kind of a game, and they did not disappoint. They came out hungry.
back
They
against
came
the
out
wall.
hungry. Yep.
Well, and that was without their right tackle as well.
Right.
So,
Right, but
What's that?
I said you said without their right tackle,
Right.
and I said right, pun intended. But I fell flat. Oh well.
So, Dallas Cowboys come out. They have a big victory. Ezekiel Elliott going to have to step up a little bit. We're going to have to see a little more out of him. I don't know, kind of a lackluster performance through the first half for Ezekiel Elliott. But the Dallas Cowboys go on to win. Big game again this weekend. So hopefully the Cowboys can win again. And if they do that, of course, that puts them at 9-5. I do believe that they, honestly, win out the rest of their season. I don't think they lose another game.
That's a big old prediction
So-
coming from you, JP.
It is, and I'm not a huge Dallas Cowboys
I was going to
fan.
say you're not the biggest. You're the Bears. I know you love them.
Yep, the Bears, the Bears, and the Steelers.
Yeah.
Those are my two teams. But the Dallas Cowboys, I really do. I do believe that they'll win out the rest of the season, go into the playoffs with some momentum. They can get some key injured players back. I think you better step back and watch out. They're going to make a run for that trophy, the Lombardi Trophy. So I think the Cowboys could have the formula if they can find some consistency here in the last three games and go into the playoffs strong. I think they can win all the way through, but they're going to find some consistency. And Ezekiel Elliott's just going to have to run hard every game, every quarter, every minute, and you don't get to have a bad half. It reminds me back, if you want to elevate the guys like Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, guys like Craig James, guys like Eric Dickerson, Jerome Bettis. If you want to raise to that level, it doesn't matter what the conditions or what your pain is. You better get out there. You better score. You better run 3.5 to 4 yards a carry and just make it happen. And so I don't think Ezekiel Elliott is at that level yet. And we're going to have to find out if he can turn it up a notch. So, but they're going to need him, that's for sure, if the Cowboys are going to remain victorious as they get ready to go and finish up their schedule and get themselves into the playoffs.
Well, everybody, coaches, staff, obviously the players, everybody is going to have to bring their A game for the rest of the season and just keep it going. There's no time left. When you look at our schedule, we have no time for a bump in the road or a bad game. We just, at this point, we just don't.
Yep, that's the truth. That is, and I don't think they're going to. Again, I think they're going to win out their season. So
you think they're hungry now?
That's the fun part of predicting.
Yep, you think they're hungry now?
I think that Dak is finally taking the reins over on the team.
Step it up to that next level of
vocal.
step it up to that next level of leadership, which is something, I've always been a big Dak fan, and I was looking for that next level of maturity in his leadership. And is that what you're saying? You're seeing, because that's what I think I'm seeing from him.
I am.
Okay.
I am. I mean, he's becoming more vocal. It wouldn't hurt him, and I'm sure he's done this, but to sit down and have lunch with Troy Aikman and say, "Man, help me out here. I'm kind of a quiet guy like you were, but Chet, you got it done, and you were vocal with your leadership, and your team followed you." Not that they don't follow Dak. It's just a different thing. I mean, I guess unless you've played football, you probably don't understand. It's almost mystical on what it is, and you get more out of your. It's like you're able to get 10 to 25% more out of your players than they really have to give you.
Right. Well, and that's where it's just that true grit comes through. It's, but everything being equal, everybody being technically, about the same and all this kind of stuff. It's just, are you willing to put in more blood, sweat, and tears for whoever's motivating you? Well, I mean, look at Tom Brady. I mean, he's one of those. He can get performances out of his teammates that are just stellar, and that's what you have to have. That's what it's. There's that natural leadership, and you're right. Troy Aikman had it just in abundance. And Troy Aikman wasn't some loud, rowdy guy. Very, very quiet, unassuming, humble man. But boy, his team played for him. They stepped up every time.
Absolutely. Well, and you can go all the way back to Broadway Joe, and even further back. Though Broadway Joe's a good one because Jets just haven't had that kind of zip. But I mean, look at the leadership Broadway Joe brought to the team. Now, of course, he was a lot more colorful, but I mean, nobody thought the Jets could do it, and Broadway Joe did it. And so,
Broadway Joe, I haven't heard that. Haven't heard that name. And you just, it flashed into my head when you said that. Remember when he did that legs pantyhose commercial back in the day? Way back in the day. When you said that image just popped in my head.
That's funny.
He had some charisma.
He did. Of course, the image that pops in my head is him holding the football off, running off after winning the Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, it just takes that, and I think Dak is stepping it up. I think his game is getting better, and I'm not talking on the field. I'm talking off the field and on the field.
Right.
So that's why that's one of the. I mean, and I know it's crazy. It sounds very mystical, but that's why I think the Cowboys will finish out their season. I think Dak is finally finding his groove, and so I do believe that Dak will take care of business. Going on into the NFL, Arizona does not at all let up. They hammer the Chicago Bears at home. Kyler Murray 4 touchdowns. This will be the second time in his NFL career where he's put 4 touchdowns on the board. I mean, this guy is just showing that he is all of that in a box of chocolates, without a shadow of a doubt.
All of that in a bag
I
of
think
chips.
if anybody, I think that if you're savory, I'm sweet.
There you go. You are sweet.
If anybody,
You are sweet,
I am.
JP.
Well, thank you. Thank you. If anybody questions his ability to transition into the NFL at his size, I think the answer has been made. I mean, an amazing game against the Bears in atrocious weather conditions. Of course, Arizona is not used to that kind of weather, and they go in and they smash the Chicago Bears. So hats off to Arizona as they continue to have the best record in the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles don't let up. They beat the New York Jets, even though they don't have key players. Big score there. They scored 33 points. Just shows you how bad the Jets are, because the Eagles are not that good. And so, but the Eagles will continue. They're climbing the NFC. I think the Cowboys, I think that we're a game away, Kathy, if I'm not mistaken, of clinching the playoffs.
I think you're correct on that. Somebody on the feed, like Coach Quigley or Michelle, correct us if we're wrong, but I think you're right. I think it's just one more win at this point. You know, and everybody's talking about the Washington, including one of the sports shows I was listening to this morning. I mean, is there anything there? What are your thoughts on that?
No, they're just playing teams that are bad. I mean, let's be honest, the Las Vegas Raiders aren't that good. No, the Washington's still the Washington. I think you should just put an exclamation point on their helmet. And then
or the
little
away. Symbol, formerly known as, like Prince.
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Go build a log cabin. Go build a log cabin fence for your chickens. I mean, help me out here. Washington is just bad. They get lucky.
Build a fence for your chickens. Where'd you pull that one out
you remember that Friends episode where Joey is building that little Lego log?
Oh, they had a duck and a chicken duck or goose and okay, that's right. They had a pet. Did they have a pet chick and a pet duck or something? He and Chandler.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was greatness.
Yeah. So, anywho, I mean, give me a break. But the Washington is done. I mean, they won't beat the Cowboys. And then the other game of note that I made note of was Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers and go on to beat the Ravens 20-19. Great game. The Steelers are making a comeback, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that AFC Central sizes up. Other big win, the Detroit Lions. Like, I can't let this go. The Lions finally put it together, and surprisingly, they go on to beat the Minnesota Vikings at home 29-27. So good for the Detroit Lions. I'm impressed. So really, I mean, nothing else of note. Tampa Bay beats Atlanta. No big shocker there. The Chargers beating the Bengals at home. They beat them 41-22. That's a little bit of a shock because I didn't think the Bengals were that bad, but the Chargers may be that good. That AFC West is sizing up to be a shootout out there. Good luck to everybody in the AFC West. Rams handled Jacksonville with no problem. Another shocker, San Francisco losing to Seattle 30-23. Didn't see that coming. No big shock, Kansas City smoking Denver. Denver's defense is good, but they're not as good as the Kansas City offense. Kansas City is getting its rhythm back down, and do watch for them to make an amazing run in the playoffs. Watch the big game tonight, New England and Buffalo. That is going to be an interesting telltale. Should be a great Monday night football game. And with that is sports, Kathy.
There you go. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, hey, can we have an update on Stan? Because I know folks have been praying for him. And so how's he going? How are things going towards his progression towards getting back home by Christmas?
Well, we'll find out more on December 14th.
Okay.
When we talk to the surgeon again. He's getting up and walking.
Good.
But he's only doing it when the occupational and physical therapists are there. And so hopefully this next couple of days and into this week, he'll be able to get up more.
Okay.
So we can continue to walk and practice. We're still doing baths in the bed, and hopefully we'll get into the shower more often on our own.
Excellent.
With, of course, nurse being there with him, but so hopefully that's the case. Mind is strong as ever.
Which is good.
His mind is strong. So
yep.
Oh,
absolutely, and we're going to continue to ask the crew to pray for him. It's great. I do love that because I love Stan's mind. I mean, talk about a beautiful mind. He's as sharp as a tack. He's hilarious. He's just got this wicked, crazy, and wicked and cutting sense of humor, which I love. But it's so funny because whenever I'm talking with you and you're at the rehab center with him, boy, he's in the background. I'm being held prisoner. They have me here against my will.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, Stan, okay, yeah. I love you. Do what they say. Yeah. Follow JP's orders.
He is not being held prisoner.
No, but that's when I heard that. I was like, "You're welcome." That's when I heard him say that. I was like, "He's fine. His mind is sharp as ever. He's 100% on there." So,
yeah, and he is.
Oh,
he is. Well, Kathy, that closes us out.
That's it. And I'm good. Great. I knew we would have lots to cover with sports today. So, thanks, JP. And are you on your way to Frisco ISD this morning?
I'm getting ready to walk in the door.
Love it. We'll have a great day with tribunals. We need to do a little tribunal catch up because it's interesting. The more and more folks you're talking to who are in the world of education. I was just on some big conference call the other day, and I tell you what, truancy has become, it's a bigger issue than it's ever been. It really is. Yep. So this is something, if you're looking at the school system and any kind of predictors on where our youth are going, I tell you, we need to have you just come on one day. We need to just cover truancy in schools, not just locally here, all across the state of Texas and all across the country. So anyway, so go fix it.
Man, we're going to. Have a blessed day, everybody. All right.
Everybody have a blessed one. We'll see you soon. Mwah. Love y'all. Stay tuned for Heart and Soul of Texas Women coming up at 10.